The ultimate ambition of China's rulers isn't to trade with the United States. It is to raid the United States.
Welcome back. Our special series, The China Threat, continues. That was Attorney General Bill Barr. He went on to say that the United States is now dangerously dependent on the communist country for essential goods. And while China has reaped benefits from the free flow of American trade, China's predatory trade policies have hurt American businesses and now American lives that we're seeing. Joining us to talk about that is Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, Dean Cheng, and former Senior Policy Advisor to President Trump and current Policy Director at America First Policies, Curtis Ellis. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dean, I feel like this is Groundhog Day. We keep having this conversation, not you and I, but, politicians in America, where we keep talking about how we make too much stuff in America. And if there was ever a time to wake up and say, enough's enough, we're drawing the line, it's now. Why is nothing not getting done? Why isn't more getting made in America now?
Well, some of this has to do with basic economics and competitive advantage. If you think about, there's been a lot of talk, for example, about medical equipment and why isn't it made in the United States? The reality is that until you need it, masks, for example, are low margin, low skill involved. You can't really make a profit in the United States on masks when you're selling a box of 50 for $1 or $2. Wood for those days. The Chinese can. The other issue here is what happens after COVID-19. We can build plants to make those masks here. How are you going to keep those plants open when we go back to having masks selling for 50 for a buck?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it poses a great concern. Curtis, how do we incentivize these companies to look at the long term and really start getting them to bring this manufacturing back to the States? How can lawmakers make this a bigger issue?
President Trump laid this out in his campaign in 2016, as Sean Spicer will well remember. Tax cuts, regulation cuts, trade reform, and energy reform. We have cheaper energy than anywhere else in the world. We have cheaper natural gas. Put that aside for the moment because the entire energy market has collapsed. Bring our tax codes in line with that of the rest of the industrialized world. We did that. Cut back on regulation. We did that. And now we're seeing some of these jobs coming back. The Trump administration is using the Defense Production Act and using other tools in its disposal, leveraging the purchasing power of the American government to give a guaranteed demand, guaranteed market for somebody who sets up a factory and starts producing pharmaceuticals and medical devices in this country. That can be done. That's a template that can be done with various other industries as well. And we see the trade reform piece of this puzzle. By putting tariffs in place against the predatorily priced goods that are coming in from China, it is no longer economically competitive to produce things in China. And China does not have a natural advantage in producing any of this. They artificially suppress wages over there. They artificially subsidize energy costs over there. They take away land and give free subsidized factories to international corporations to produce in China. That is blatantly illegal under the World Trade Organization rules. And finally, we have a president who's standing up to this and doing something about it so that we can and will bring production back to the United States. Unfortunately, we have too many apologists in the United States Congress on both sides of the aisle who still cling to these outdated fantasies of libertarian free markets on an international level. You can't have free trade with a communist country. There are no free markets. It's not libertarianism, and it's not capitalism.
So, Dean, Curtis makes a lot of good points. I mean, there's an aspect of this. You're right, and you brought this up. You cannot sell 50 masks for $1. No one in the U.S. is going to do it. But where's that balance? Because I do think that there's an element of making sure that the right policies are in place, making sure that politicians stand up for the companies. But there's also an element of the consumer, right? Which is I'm willing, as a consumer, to spend $2 on a on a box of 50 masks, or maybe $3 if I know that I'm helping the U.S. and I'm not advantaging China. So how do we enact policies and maybe some kind of national campaign that finds that balance? Because I'm willing, based on what we've seen, over the last decade, to say I'm willing to buy American, because it's not a question of saying I'm anti-Canadian or anti-Mexican or anti-Latin America. I think it's specific to China. They want to achieve dominance. How do we draw that distinction?
I think in terms of trying to draw the distinction, I agree with you. It is important to draw that distinction. We can draw the distinction in several ways. I think the most important is it that we want people to buy American or not buy Chinese. Because at the end of the day, Indonesia, India, Peru, Mexico will still have labor cost advantages over the United States. But do we care? Is it worrisome if India or Indonesia makes our masks or our aspirin? I'd suggest probably not. In other areas, more advanced medical equipment, MRI machines and things like that, I think that those can stay shored on the United States. And then in between, we have a range of things. Curtis mentioned a lot of different steps the administration has taken. Absolutely. Deregulation, tax cuts, those have been helpful, trying to level out the playing field. But if we think we're going to come back to making T-shirts in the United States, that's going to be a really, really hard sell.
No, well, Curtis, the Trump campaign, America First, you guys, do you buy American?
Yes, of course we do. And we look, these T-shirts, maybe they're not going to be made in America, but maybe they'll be made in Honduras or in Mexico, in which case the cotton that goes into making the T-shirts will be grown in West Texas instead of Western China, where it's harvested by slaves, by the enslaved Uyghur people. So, look, there are various steps that can be taken. And we can have North America as the center of manufacturing with the United States at the center of the center.
All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. This is obviously a concern for everyone, and it's a topic that's not going to end anytime soon. So I look forward on continuing this discussion.
Thank you.